Hi, so I'm going to deal with chapter 6 and 7 of Taylor's Malaise and Modernity through a little modern day story about relationships and marriages, their breakup, and their replacement by other ones. The problem, as you'll recall, according to Taylor, is that we in our society, particularly maybe in the Western world, have adopted this very shallow notion of authenticity, and that we in effect follow our bliss, or at least that's kind of the ideal. And in doing so, we deviate into the trivial, he says. And our attempts at authenticity, though trivial, are both destructive of relationships and community and ultimately unsatisfying. So let's say we're talking about a guy who's found a gal, right? And you either kind of want to live together or you want to get married because you feel as though this person could help you to reach a new level of happiness, of fulfillment. You can work together, maybe both, like in your relationship, but also in the jobs that you have to make some money, maybe have a family. So you get into this relationship with these ideas of what, family ought to do for people, that you ought to end up with a house, with some kids, with at least enough income to be able to get the things that you want to enjoy life a little bit and so on. But along the way, you find that in the pursuit of those things, whether it's making enough money to be comfortable in the marriage, take care of your kids, or maybe it's in the pursuit of both persons' careers, in the having of kids, that things get kind of boring. If they ever were exciting, the focus shifts from the relationship between the two to these other things, and life takes on this kind of dull character of daily work. And one day, one or both of you begin to realize, my gosh, the dreams that I had of being fulfilled, right? Or in Taylor's words, finding my authenticity and living an authentic life, they don't seem to be being fulfilled. All right. We want to be, quote, validated and fulfilled, right? And I don't mean, punching a ticket validated. I do think the idea of validation is ridiculous, but I think that you know what I mean by validated, right? So let's say that in this situation, your girlfriend, as kind of bored as you are, is on Facebook, and an old high school buddy of hers DMs her, and they start to have a conversation, and she doesn't think anything of it for a little while, but then she realizes there's some romantic stuff going on. He's kind of luring her away from her marriage, and she goes along with it because it's exciting, right? She hasn't felt this way in a while. Somebody else wants her, and that puts the focus back on her. She feels like she may be validated by this man. And soon her heart shifts in this other direction, and you begin to notice some changes. You don't know the conversation is going on, but you do know that your girlfriend or wife is starting to behave strangely, doing things differently. Maybe she's buying new things, new clothes, a new phone perhaps. Maybe she's going to the gym when she really didn't care too much about how she looked before, but now she's trying to get all ripped, right? And so you're thinking to yourself, what's going on here? Is this good or bad, right? Could be good, I guess. So you ask, hey, what's up? I've noticed these changes. It's kind of exciting, right? Maybe you could become interested in your wife again. And she says, I think you already know what she's going to say, right? I don't know if I love you anymore. I think maybe I'm in love with somebody else. Okay. Why? Because it's not your fault, but this other person makes me feel loved. Okay. And I don't know if I can stay in a marriage or relationship that doesn't embrace my authenticity at this point, right? To use Taylor's language. It's inauthentic. If I stay in this relationship or marriage, I won't be living honestly, and I won't be doing you any sort of honor by being dishonest in it. I need to follow my bliss. Okay? So you scratch your head and you think to yourself, well, it's true, like the marriage has been a little bit boring. But on the other hand, we've got kids and, like maybe you don't want this kind of disruption. You value your marriage enough because of the kids, to want to make a go of it. So you contact your mutual friends, your families, you ask different people in your family and your social network, can you help us out here? Can you give us some backup? Maybe meet with us, talk with us. And what you find is either no, we won't, or yeah, we will, but only in a very shallow and superficial way in which we pat you both on the head and say, well, we wish you well, and we hope that we're friends with both of you at the end of the day. But family won't raise a finger. And the reason why is because, in our society, we value privacy, individual rights are so emphasized, right? That, we can't imagine interfering in another person's business, even if they asked us to. And the worst thing that could possibly happen is we lose our shallow relationship with them. So what you find, if you're the guy in this relationship, is that her family as well as your family are not as solid, not as rock solid supports as you would like them to be. And in fact, oftentimes they're very shallow supports, if supporting at all, for anything meaningful having to do with your relationship, with your kids, etc. So, well, after making that attempt and realizing that you aren't going to get any backup and that you're on your own, and also respecting yourself and thinking, well, I need to live an authentic life as well. I need to express myself and I need to live a life of dignity and not be embarrassed by this situation. So I guess we need to have a divorce, right? Or we need to split up. And yes, the kids are going to be upset by this, but we can tell them that they should be happy for mom because she's following her bliss, right? She's fallen in love with someone else, and so they should be happy for her. And she'll still be their mom, even if she's in another state, or if she's right next door, a little bit easier, she'll still be around, right? So we go ahead and get the divorce. And then she goes off and tries to make a new life with the man that lured her away using Facebook. And guess what? Both of them have such high expectations. He did this. He wrecked a family in order to find fulfillment, right? To finally get validation, to finally be made happy by somebody. He thought that if he could do this, he would finally get what he needed. But what he got was a woman with such high expectations. She gave away everything. She's changed everything, including, her family life, to be with him, and she has needs and demands she expects right away. And so neither one find that ultimate fulfillment in the other because it's not to be found in this way. Okay? So the tale ends with people no better off and maybe worse off than they were before, farther away, if anything, from finding true fulfillment, validation, and authenticity, and realizing that they've just, like a tornado, left a bunch of rubble in their wake. Okay? And sometimes in our society, people do this 3, 4, 5 times, sometimes across their entire lifetimes, multiple marriages or relationships, looking for the one, right? But the problem is authenticity is not found in others or in things, right? Now, Charles Taylor tries to answer on a systemic level why this is more the case, why this story plays out over and over again in our society. People seem unable to get out of it. This is not his only answer, but these are systemic reasons. We've talked a lot about this on this channel of liberal individualism and how originally, he says, it was a rebellion against a very fixed social order, right? The rebellion against feudalism and aristocracy, right? But it became strengthened and ramped up, right? To the point where we can't imagine having social obligations in the older sense, or feeling as though we're fixed in place and must stay where we are, right? And this feeds into his observation about mobility. He says we now live in a very mobile society where, everybody's moving all the time, typically for, in the pursuit of a job or a career. And it is why the family and the social network are so shallow. It's at least largely why you can't get any effective backup from your extended family. Lots of times they're far away, and if they're not far away physically, they're far away mentally doing their own thing, which leads to his point about technocratic, bureaucratic rationality. This way of thinking has taken over every sphere of our life, he says, and it makes us think instrumentally. So we always think about what's in it for me, whether we're the ones in the relationship asking that question, or let's say we're a family member or friend on the outside. What's in it for me? And what costs might I incur if I attempt to, say, help fix this problem? Guess I better stay out of it, right? So these are some of the systemic reasons that Charles Taylor says, the deeper reasons for why we follow our bliss rather than discovering our true authenticity. So you might be asking, well, at this point, like, what would Charles Taylor recommend? And what would be true authenticity? I don't think this is the last word. We have more to go in the book. But let's just say there's some things that we can glean so far, okay? First, the way to true authenticity is often to stay put, I think Charles Taylor would say, to understand and live principles that are valuable, not just to you, not just in the moment, not just based on your emotions, but valuable to society for good reasons that people can agree on beyond yourself in the moment. It might even mean submitting to a higher code of morality and conduct that restricts your choices and forces you to try to reconcile rather than splitting up. All of which might lead you to realize that the authenticity and fulfillment that you crave cannot be supplied by things, career advancement, or even other people. It has to be found within yourself through real deep, sometimes painful self-examination and the reasoning about principles. That not only about how you feel, but what's truly best for you and for others. I think this is kind of where Charles Taylor is headed. Taylor, therefore, thinks that we should resurrect a better idea of authenticity rather than rejecting it. But he doesn't note all the obstacles in the way. Okay? He wants to believe that people always have choices and that they're not locked in, but he doesn't realize just how hard it is to get out, because he kind of downplays one very important thing, and that's capitalism. Capitalism is a factor that he mentions but briefly, and he doesn't provide any analysis really of the effect of consumer capitalism in particular. But capitalism encourages the very expressivism that he criticizes as a source of shallow authenticity. Expressivism is where you feel as though you're authentic because of how you dress, or what kind of food you eat, or what kind of meditation practice you do, or what books you read, or I don't know. You know what I'm saying, the Facebook post, the Instagram picture. Capitalism feeds off of that, right? That desire for shallow authenticity, because there's always something to sell you. Capitalism makes choice the highest freedom and the greatest right that we have. It's the ultimate in self-expression in this shallow authenticity. It literally feeds on family and community disarray. The more broken up and isolated people are from their family and community, the more anxious and isolated they are, the more they will try to buy things and experiences that will make them feel better in the moment. And finally, capitalism of this kind encourages a Nietzschean rejection of morality as restricting our freedom to pursue our bliss. Morality gets in the way of our being self-interested, of our shallow authenticity. It might ask us to actually put aside our momentary feelings for the greater good, or even for our own better good. So capitalism discourages that way of thinking, and so it encourages the flouting of morality. A lot of people don't want to recognize that, but that's nonetheless the case. And so to complete this argument, I think Taylor needs to, or needed to, take into account the effects of this type of consumer capitalism, and somehow deal with it. Because I do agree with him, we cannot give up. We need to rediscover true authenticity. We need to actually do better, far better than we're doing.